Hello everyone, welcome to the series. Please like and subscribe. Also check out the story in the description. With that, let's begin. Chapter 25, USJ Aftermath. Third POV. Izuku was transferred to the nurse's office to recover and rest before he got up and started to move around. All Might was in the office looking disappointed with himself since he was meant to be at the event. And it would have gone so much easier if both he and Izuku had double-teamed the creature. However, what All Might was most concerned about what Izuku said about the creature. He said it had multiple quirks, and he also said that he was back. All Might didn't like that. He didn't like that at all. Izuku was currently asleep since Recovery Girl's quirk took a lot of energy out of him. As such, All Might sat in the room and waited. After about 15 minutes, he woke up in the living room and groaned. "Good to see you awake, my boy," All Might stated as he looked over Izuku. Izuku then saw the detective that was on the other side of the room making notes from earlier statements he got from student. He looked over and waved at Izuku. "Good, you are awake. I need you to run me through the events," the detective asked, and Izuku did. The details were grim. Everything is pointing towards All for One being alive and being back. Soon a staff meeting would be held in regards to the events, and Izuku planned to attend since it had become far more important. As such, he got out of bed but was sluggish and had to have All Might and the detective help him get to the staff room. While this was going on, Aizawa was with One telling a story. "Sensei, are you okay? You have been starting in the air for about 3 minutes now when you said you would explain stuff to us," Uraraka asked. Aizawa snapped out of it and lightly shook his head. "Sorry, there is a lot of guilt involved in this. I know I couldn't have done anything, but there is a reason I said what I told you all on the first day. Do you remember my words from the test?" Aizawa asked. "They said a few things, but then Bakugo got it. You're talking about how you glared at us when Uraraka talked about the rule being unfair. You said that heroics is unfair, that life is unfair. What does that have to do with this and what was said at the USJ?" Bakugo asked. Aizawa nodded his head. "Good, you remember. It has everything to do with it. Life is unfair. It is the hero's job to make it fairer for those that we can. However, sometimes life is just unfair and there is nothing to be done. Heroics is not fun. It is not safe. It is deadly." And Izuku Midoriya, Aka Fulcrum, learned that at the end of his first year, Aizawa said with his head looking straight at them all. They all tensed up at what was said. "Look to the person next to you and then look at the next person next to you. One of them will die before you ever retire if you get lucky and retire." However, for Fulcrum, both people to his sides died. Those people were his two friends that would become brothers in all but blood to him. They would do almost everything together. However, fate was not kind to them as it decided to claim their lives, and Fulcrum almost went with them that day. Aizawa stated in a sad tone. Bakugo's eyes widened. "How did I not know any of this?" he thought. The class all had eyes widen. Aizawa then started to talk about the three misfits. These boys were the three individuals that survived the shrunken class from 2 to 1. They survived me expelling everyone else but themselves. As such, they got put onto an advanced track of education and had earned their provisional license at the start of the second semester of their first year. These boys were good. All three of them could take at least one of UA teachers down in a fight of 2v1. 2 teachers against 1 student, Aizawa stated. And this surprised everyone at how strong they were, for them to take pro heroes on and defeat at least one of them in battle. Before Fulcrum worked with All Might's agency, he and the 2 other brothers wanted to gain experience first before being connected to All Might, since the 2 boys were also protégés of All Might. Though they came after Izuku introduced them to All Might, they still earned that title through their determination, willpower, and hard work. As such, they started out in the Gang Orca agency together since they could work so well in a team but also work as individual heroes, Aizawa stated. Then Aizawa went over how the boys' initial work studies went. Shinso even chimed in on how he met Fulcrum and how he got saved from bullies. However, fate was not kind. "Do any of you know the tale of the 3 misfits?" Aizawa asked, and everyone said they did, and then they realized. The 3 boys were the 3 misfits, and they all paled since that story was gurgling towards the provisional heroes that stood their ground. "I see you all made the connection." Yes, Fulcrum was the 3rd boy from that day, whereas 2 brothers died fighting an army of villains. That is why he stood in front of you all. He refuses to let your class suffer his and his brother's fate and have any of you die anytime soon, Aizawa stated. He then asked them if they had any questions, and they did, of course. He answered them the best he could. One question though asked about how he recovered. "Recovered? You don't exactly recover from watching your 2 brothers die. The pain dulls over time, but you never fully recover. You only get more functional. I will tell you now. There is a memorial here on campus that you will find Izuku at almost always if he is on campus and isn't busy doing something. Don't ever disrespect the memorial site, since the last person that did resulted in Izuku beating them up and dragging them to Nezu's office to be expelled. The staff is protective of Izuku since he is the last member of his class, and we also all feel guilt towards him losing his brothers even though we couldn't do anything about it. Aizawa stated. The class asked some more questions for the next 10 minutes of Fulcrum's life and time at UA, and they found out that he already could leave but choose to stay to help guide the first years so they didn't repeat his and his brother's fate. The class was awed at this and vowed to help him feel wanted and have him enjoy his time with them. Thank you all. After that day, he hasn't really made new friends. There weren't many that would approach him since the now second years were afraid of him due to how hostile he was right after the memorial issue. As such, he doesn't have any friends outside of the staff and a few heroes, Aizawa stated and bowed his head to his class since they had decided to make him feel welcomed with their class. Aizawa told them not to go spread the information they learned around since Izuku had the names from the Three Misfits tragedy blocked from the public and doesn't talk much about his brothers to those that didn't already know. Soon Aizawa dismissed them and said he needed to go to a meeting, though a few of them asked if they could wait for Fulcrum to wake up. Go home. He is already awake and is waiting for me in the meeting room. The staff has to deal with the fallout from the attack and you all forget he is more or less a staff person. You will all see him when you return, Aizawa said as he directed them to go home. He then made his way to the staff room to find everyone else there already. He looked at Izuku and apologized, which confused Izuku until Aizawa explained. I told my class of you and your brothers. They questioned why I said what I did at the USJ when I said that I refused to bury another one of you three. So they all know and shouldn't bug you with all of their questions about it, Aizawa said, and Izuku tensed up for a bit but relaxed. It was going to happen sooner or later, but I guess it would do good for them to know it since they just went through this attack. It should help them see why the hero path isn't meant to be fun and cool as the media makes it out to be. At least it will give them perspective on what can happen, Izuku said and turned his head back towards the meeting. Nezu got up and looked ready to talk. Soon they started to dig into the details of the attack as the detective was talking about it. Gran Torino had also shown up since this was going to be about All for One as well. They talked about how they got in, which they all agreed the break-in was covered by the media. We can use that fact to beat the media back on their questions since they have a hand in this, Izuku stated with a grin. Don't get him wrong, the media was good but they were also idiots. The staff just shook their heads at Izuku's thoughts. They felt pity for the media. Then they talked about the leaders of the attack and then they brought up to the staff that the so-called leaders were puppet heads. Currently, the so-called leaders are just puppet heads for a bigger villain. That is far more dangerous. Do any of you know of the merchant? The merchant of quirks, Nezu asked, and they all said it was a myth. It isn't a myth since he is the one that gave me my wound, All Might stated, which made them all pale. Some still tried to deny it but gave in. The creature had multiple quirks which can really only be done by the merchant of quirks or so-called All for One. This creature was made to kill All Might but found the protege instead. Luckily Izuku has the strength that rivals All Might. Otherwise, this would have turned into a massacre of our students since Izuku still got injured, Nezu stated, and the grim reality sat in for the staff at that moment. They came so close to losing an entire class but didn't due to Izuku's will and determination to not give up. They all just thanked Izuku and he waved them off since it was his duty and he wouldn't let the first years repeat his brothers and his fate. Soon they all kept talking about possible plans for the future and Izuku decided to bring an idea up. Nezu, I think it would be good to move the students on campus, or at least Hero Course students first. Since we more or less know All for One has a hand in this, we will need to hunt him down so All Might and I can fight him in a death match. However, until then he could target the students or his so-called successor could aim for our students to make a statement. They did already try to kill someone in the exam. It wouldn't be far-fetched to say they might target a hero student tour from school, Izuku stated. The staff just discussed the idea and they talked about if they had the resources. It was determined they did, and the dorms could be placed to the side of the main building and that the staff would have a dorm as well. Nezu, where would I stay since there is no real reason to make an entire dorm for one person? Izuku asked, and the staff realized the issue. He was the only student of 3A. Simple. You will live with the staff. You already do staff duties and have your full hero license. You really aren't a student anymore except in name only, Nezu stated, and they all realized that the statement was true. Izuku agreed to it since he would be near those he cared about, though getting his mother to agree would be a struggle. Izuku also decided that he would likely switch to using the gyms on campus more but would decide since the warehouse was still relevantly close to UA and All Might didn't need to use his buff form there. Soon the meeting came to a close and those that knew the truth of One for All stayed. This year is going to be rough, isn't it? Izuku asked. They could only agree. Any time All for One was involved it was going to get rough. Izuku then looked over at All Might. Master, when we find him you aren't going in alone. I will be entering with you or you won't be going at all, Izuku said. All Might protested. It's my job to finish him as your master. You shouldn't be fighting him. Not yet, All Might said as he stood up and looked at Izuku. Wrong, I'm the current wielder, meaning your duty ended. Also, that is what all of the past users did. Went off and died and didn't take help. If we both fight him we have better odds of winning since we both can use 100% of OFA until you lose what you have left. As such, we either both go in or you don't go in at all. Izuku stated in a firm voice. All Might asked if Izuku would go in alone. If you refuse to go in with me at the same time. Yes, I refuse to watch you die when you are no longer the current user and I am. It's my responsibility to end him. I have 90% of One for All under control and hopefully, by the time the fight happens, I will hit 100% and just keep growing, meaning I will be the same strength as you. Izuku stated, leaving no room for arguments. All Might just relent when Gran Torino sided with Izuku. Izuku thanked Gran, but Gran still had words to say. Kid, the fight with All for One better not become your last fight. That promise with your brothers to die in a blaze of glory doesn't include a fight with him, so you better live past that day. Do you understand me? Gran Torino stated. Gran knew too well the fate of the users. He hated their fate to fight to the death with that ancient man. Izuku just nodded his head. Well, who is going to help convince my mother to allow me to stay on the campus? Izuku said, and they all laughed. Nezu said he would go and help convince her. The others suggested to come and help as well since they had a dinner set with the Midoriya home today anyway. As such, everyone got up and headed off to go to the Midoriya house. When Izuku walked in, he was met with his mother and his brother's parents. Hey everyone, Izuku said as he knew this was going to be a long conversation. His brother's parents were told about One for All since Izuku had planned to tell his brothers anyway but never got the chance. With All for One back, they are all in equal danger since All for One may target them. Soon they explained the events of the day since it was all over the news. They then got to the conversation about All for One. Mom, All for One is alive, Izuku stated. She and the other parents froze. They knew what that meant. They knew that Izuku would have a fight to the death with him. They all just moved to him and hugged him. After a bit, they let go and sat down and had stopped preparing the food since they wanted to focus on this conversation. They talked about how they figured it out and that it wouldn't be surprising for the fight to happen in the next year or two with how activate All for One is appearing to be. All Might apologized to Inko since he had promised her that he was dead. I thought he was. I don't know how he survived having his head caved in. That should be impossible, but it appears not for him. All Might stated. Soon they went to the conversation about the dorms. I want to live on campus in the staff dorms so I can watch over the 1A and 1B students. The villains might show an interest in them since they survived the first attack and All Might is their direct teacher for foundational classes. I know this will cut the time we all have together down more in what might be my final years alive. But I can't let them come to harm, Izuku said with a few tears in his eyes. Inko just hugged her and said it was fine. He just needed to video call her as much as possible. As such, the night went on and everyone there had dinner together. The mood was somber since they knew the future would not be kind to them and that Izuku and All Might would have a higher chance of dying sooner than they all believed possible. They could only enjoy the silent night with the few waves of laughter that some people let out when they were talking to the others. Chapter 26, Sports Festival and Talk of the Past. Third POV. It's been about a week since the attack on the USJ. The media attempted to rake UA over the coals with the attack, but UA pushed back and called the media out on how they had a hand in the attack. It was amazing to watch, as one reporter asked what they will do in regards to their weak defenses and how they would respond in regards to the villains. Izuku struck back. All things are not 100% certain in life. Nothing is perfect. However, we will continue to move forward and build up our defenses of the school. We did anticipate a second attack on the school after the first one. As such, that is why I was sent with the first-year students, to ensure their safety more since we just couldn't cancel and keep canceling events if we didn't know for certain when they would attack, Izuku stated, and a reporter took the bait on the words first and the second attack and asked about what he meant. Oh yes, the attack on the USJ was actually their second one. The first one you media had a hand in. It was when you all came onto the campus setting the alarms off and consumed our attention, controlling you. This allowed one of the main villains to warp into our building and steal the schedule. So yes, the media played a large role in the villain's attack on UA and endangering our students. Thank you so much for that since you all couldn't be proper human beings and leave our campus alone when you were told many times that day. Instead, you wanted a damning story that helped endangered our students' lives, Izuku stated with a cold smile on his face. The reporters tried to object, but Izuku just kept shutting them down by pointing out if they weren't crowded at the gate, then the villains wouldn't have had the chance to break into the building in the first place. The reporters got silent quickly and let the press conference go forward. Izuku made sure that UA had streamed the press conference themselves so the public would see what happened unedited. It was amazing to read the comments later as the public bashed the media for aiding the villains in the attack on UA, and the public was supporting UA since no students got injured and there were minimal wounds on the hero side. Everyone was supporting UA more and more, unlike the villains' aim of damaging their reputation. Soon the classes also started back up and it was time for the students to return. Izuku made sure to stop by Wana during one of their classes to show them that he was fine. He also was digging into anything that could be related to All for One since they knew he was now alive. Soon though Izuku was going to go for lunch when he saw a large number of people outside the Wana doors. Izuku listened to the conversation and he was annoyed. He heard people talking about how the Wana students were arrogant just because they got attacked, and then there was the idiot blonde from 1B that has annoyed Izuku one too many times. Izuku decided to move in. "I think that is enough, wouldn't you say?" Izuku said as he walked up. Though he wasn't in his UA uniform or his hero outfit, so some didn't recognize him. Some asked who the hell he was and Izuku just smiled. "Hello, I'm Fulcrum. Nice to meet you all," Izuku said with a cheer in his voice. The students paled a bit at who walked up to them. "Now, I heard a lot of interesting comments. You will all leave this class alone or else you will be punished. This class didn't ask to be attacked by villains and you are all thinking that they act holier than thou for it. Well, guess what? Getting attacked and fighting for your life isn't fun. The villains had a monster that could kill All Might there and you think they enjoyed it from some of your comments. Leave now," Izuku said. "But stop, Nido Monoma." Izuku grabbed him by the ear and dragged him to Nezu's office. "Now, I told you to drop that damn toxic rivalry you tried starting. Or if it was a complex you had that you needed to drop, but it seems you didn't listen to me. Nezu, I recommend a week of detention. And if he keeps going it will increase until the point we expel him," Izuku said to Nezu as they walked to the principal's office. The boy just looked pale as he had gotten dragged to the principal's office by his ear and was dragged past his class. Vlad King just shook his head when his student looked at him. Nezu agreed with the assessment and gave the boy detention for a week and warned him that it would rise to the level of expulsion if he kept on his current path. Izuku just watched the boy leave and shook his head. "I don't get what his problem is with 1A. It doesn't make sense. I could understand some jealousy of being in 1B compared to 1A, but the level he takes it goes too far," Izuku stated. Nezu agreed and said he would look into it. Soon the classes got back on track and they were told that they would have the sports festival in 2 weeks. Izuku was not planning on being present for the third years or the first years. He had told his master and the school that he was planning to skip his sports festival and just train during the entire time. Izuku wanted to be as prepared as he could for the upcoming fight with All for One whenever it came. As such, that is how Izuku spent the next 2 weeks and trained non-stop. Though he did take a break on the day of the sports festival and turned on the TV to watch the first years. It was interesting to say since Kaken was the year representative and his speech was one of a kind when he declared that he would go on to become number 1. The first round was an obstacle course and Kaken came in first with Todoroki coming in second place. He flipped to the third year and there were comments on why there are no hero students this year, and the announcer stated that there was only one hero course student who was devoting his time to training instead of attending. The announcement also stated that the school approves of it, due to the dedication that the student has been putting in and was willing to meet his needs since no one could move up to the hero course during the third year regardless of where they placed anyway. As such, it was mostly just an advertisement shown for the business and support course students and good old fun for the general student. The school didn't want them to work too hard and just focus on making connections. Izuku then switched back to the first year events. They were currently doing a round of cavalry battles and Bakugo really knew how to dominate the field. He was keeping people away and even used his team's quirks to his advantage as he flew around with his explosives but kept the tape from Zero on his body to pull him back to the team before he touched the ground. Overall, he watched the fights go on but noticed that Todoroki wasn't using his flames. This concerned Izuku for many reasons, but most importantly, if Todoroki went out in the field like that, he was asking to be killed. That was an entire side of his body that is left open to getting attacked, and what happens if someone's in danger? And they can only be saved by the fire side of his quirk. He will have no control over it and risks killing the person needing to be saved or worse, killing his own team. Izuku did see that Bakugo did end up forcing Todoroki to use it for a split second before he cut it off though. The event continued and soon it was time for the individual matches. Izuku pulled his phone out and sent a text message to Bakugo wishing him good luck but reminding him to keep his temper in check since it was on national TV. Bakugo sent back a short explosive emoji which Izuku just chuckled at. Though as the matches for the individual tournament was going on, Izuku received an alert from the All Might Agency. Another hero was taken down by Stain and it was Ida's older brother. Shit, that isn't going to go well for the younger brother and he might snap and do something stupid. Stain is really becoming an issue that needs to be stopped, Izuku muttered out loud. Izuku left the room he was in and went and got a laptop and started to dig into anything they had on Stain and looked for other cases that might have been missed. He also kept an eye on the festival as well, and as he looked up he saw Bakugo and Todoroki fighting and he was surprised. Bakugo had forced Todoroki to use his fire. Izuku could hear something being yelled about it was his power and not someone else's. It was at that moment that Todoroki lit on fire, and the explosion from both sides caused a flash of light and a lot of destruction. Izuku focused and wondered who won. The dust soon settled and Bakugo was declared the winner since Todoroki had 1 foot out while Bakugo stayed in. That is how Bakugo had taken first place and won the gold medal. Izuku was happy for Bakugo and sent him a text message congratulating him. After Izuku finished watching the events after the medals were given out, he started looking over his notes again. Izuku believed he found a connection to a long list of cases that are likely related to the Stain case that no one knew about. These cases belonged to a vigilante that disappeared roughly the same time Stain made his appearance. Well, if that isn't concerning, Izuku thought. He read what notes they had on the vigilante's quirk and had a general idea behind Stain's quirk, though it was all based on the idea that Stain and the vigilante were the same people, which Izuku was hoping he was right. Soon a week passed and Izuku was asked to help with the hero names. For the most part, everything went fine and Izuku got Todoroki to use an actual hero name instead of his first name. So he went with duality while Bakugo's name included murder. Izuku shook his head and suggested Ground Zero, which he went with. Izuku did notice the way that Idatenya was looking and only grew more concerned. Izuku decided to go talk to All Might about his plans during the first year's internships. As such, that is how he found himself in a lounge with All Might drinking tea. My boy, I was thinking of what we could do during the first year internships since I will be free to move around, All Might stated, and Izuku butted in. Actually, about that, I already have some plans and wondered if you wanted to come or not. We need to deal with Stain. I also have concerns about Idatenya and him doing something stupid like going after Stain. As such, I plan to go to Hasu during their entire internship time to make sure he doesn't try anything stupid, but also to track down Stain to arrest him, Izuku said, and All Might sat there thinking. He then nodded his head and agreed. That would be a good idea for Izuku to do. I can come in my skinny form as well and stay relatively nearby in the city, so if something does happen I can bulk up and get to your location if you press the beacon, All Might stated. Izuku nodded his head at that and agreed with that plan. They talked a bit more and talked about Izuku's current progress. As it stands, I can use 100%, but it hurts. I can use 95% without hurting myself, so I am close to getting to that 100% mark and pushing further to grow the power. I'm confident in my ability to deal with almost anyone that isn't All for One, since he can fight us at 100%. Stain shouldn't be an issue overall in power, but it's the experience that he has over me that will present an issue, Izuku said. All Might nodded his head. Indeed, experience is something you can only gain by doing it. You have gained quite a lot, but still compared to the really troublesome characters, you will be lacking compared to them. All you can do is keep moving forward and doing what you can do, All Might stated. They did talk about Izuku's fan base a bit and how they think he will rank once the next board hits. They are predicting for him to be in the top 10 likely due to how fast his fan base has grown. Izuku already had a decent size before, but the longer time moves the more he gets due to his connection to All Might being out in the open. Soon, the conversations came to an end and Izuku decided to go make a stop at Nezu's office. Come in, Nezu said. Nezu asked what Izuku needed and he asked if he has received the requests on where the WANA students would be going. Nezu did, since Aizawa had just dropped them off. Izuku went through them and found Idatenya's request. Asked, I feared. He's going to Hasu, Izuku said, and Nezu made the connections right there and then. Nezu asked Izuku if he should cancel it, but Izuku said they had no real evidence to stop it. Anyway, I plan to go to Hasu with All Might. He's going in his skinny form and will move around the city, so he will be nearby in the event of anything. I am aiming to track and arrest Stain before he changes cities again, Izuku stated, and Nezu nodded his head. They played a few rounds of chess as they talked about some different things. The dorms have already been built and some of the hero students were already moving onto the campus. All of the remaining ones would be living on campus after the internships end as well. Izuku has enjoyed being closer to the memorial site more often since he could sit at it more often. That is how he found himself the day before the internship started. He was sitting at the memorial when Bakugo walked up to him. Hey Aniki, Bakugo called out. Bakugo called out again since Izuku didn't respond, and this snapped him out of his thoughts. Sorry, Kaken. I was thinking, Izuku said as he looked down at the memorial. Bakugo walked over and sat next to Izuku and relaxed into his side like he would do when he was a young child. Aniki, could you tell me about them? You never talked about them at home, Bakugo stated, and Izuku tensed a bit, which Bakugo felt, and before he could take his words back, Izuku spoke up. It's all right. It's just hard to talk about them without remembering the final days. Kaken, do me a favor. I think you are already making a small group in your class. I think you guys called it the Backic Squad, Izuku asked, and Bakugo just turned his head away and scoffed. Izuku just laughed a bit. Do me a favor, and if they are friends that you really care about, then hold on to them with everything you got. Enjoy your time with them, since in this field you don't know when it will all come to an end. I will do everything I can to ensure you all don't go through that pain before you graduate this school. Do you understand me? Izuku said as he held Bakugo close in a tight grip. Bakugo's eyes widened a bit and said he understood. Izuku then started to talk about his two brothers and how they were going to challenge the entire world and change things. Bakugo sat there and listened to everything and absorbed it all. This was the first time that his Aniki had willingly talked about these people, since he never talked about it when he was at the house, nor did his aunt and co talk about them, but Bakugo knew there were two families that always visited the house. Bakugo made the assumption that they were the parents of the two other boys and finally understood why they were always around. The pain bonded the families together, and Izuku represented everything that was left of their children that remained in this world. Bakugo thanked Izuku for telling him about them and promised he would hold on to his friends the best he could. Bakugo asked Izuku to come back to the wanted dorms to visit with them all, since they all wanted to hang out with him. Izuku looked shocked, and Bakugo hated that fact. He hated the fact that Izuku was alone so much, since he had lost those that he held the closest to him outside of his aunt. Izuku agreed to come back to the dorms, and Izuku put the fire out at the memorial site before they headed back. "Kaken, can you and wanna do me a favor?" Izuku asked, and Bakugo said sure, but Izuku decided against asking it. "Just ignore my words for now. I'll ask the favor in the future when the time comes," Izuku stated. Bakugo didn't like that. For some reason, he knew that favor wasn't going to be one he wanted to complete, but would have no choice but to. Chapter 27, Are You an Idiot? Third POV. The day of the internships arrived, and the students all got onto a train and left after talking to Eraserhead. Izuku came out of his hiding, and Aizawa looked at him. "Your guess is likely right. Ida is going to do something stupid. I have a mission I have to go on, so please keep an eye out for the idiot. And we can punish him when he gets back," Aizawa stated. Izuku nodded his head at Aizawa's statement and soon got onto the next train. Izuku would need to take a second train at a different location and would arrive about 2 hours after it. Izuku was going to be staying in a hotel near the area and would do his patrol in the afternoon, since all of Stain attacks have happened in the afternoon or night. Izuku was sitting on the bus and recalled the dream he had last night. It was a dream from One for All. The first user arrived before him and showed memories of the past. Izuku could walk around inside of One for All now, since he had so much control of the quirk. "Hello, Knight. It's been a while since you've been here. Last time was when 7th passed her quirk to you," stated the first user. Izuku looked at the first user and asked why he was here and why did he see those memories. The first user was silent before he decided to speak. "Everything happens sometimes for a reason. As a user of One for All, you are destined to fight my brother. I never thought I would condemn so many people to their deaths due to passing the quirk. Tell me, do you regret taking the quirk knowing you will be walking towards death?" asked the first user. Izuku was silent at the question but answered within seconds. "I have no regrets. If I didn't have the quirk, would I have been there to stop the Namu? No, so many of them likely would have died in that event. Do I fear my death? Yes. Do I fear walking towards it? No. I am proud to be the 9th user of One for All," Izuku said with determination in his eyes. The first person nodded their heads. "You do realize that, even with my brother injured, he is still strong enough to fight you on equal terms or even overpower you, right? He got injured by All Might due to letting his guard down, since none of the wielders before could injure him, and that costed him. He won't make that mistake with you," stated the first user, and Izuku paled a bit at the power that All for One has even while being injured. "Frightening, isn't it?" asked the first user. Izuku, though, felt there was a true meaning behind this meeting, that the first user wasn't saying something that needed to be said. The smile that the first user had on was sad, as if he knew something that Izuku didn't, that something sad was going to happen. "What are you not saying? You know something, don't you?" Izuku asked. The first user nodded his head. "Indeed I do, and I first want to say I am sorry. I am sorry that you were condemned to die," stated the first user, and Izuku's eyes widened at that. Izuku wondered if the first user didn't see any hope of Izuku winning and didn't have faith in him. The first user, sensing these thoughts, corrected Izuku's misunderstanding. "It's not that I don't have faith in you. It's the fact that I know you too well, that you will accept my offer, which will result in your death because you will do everything you can to stop him, which includes dying for it," stated the first user as he shook his head slowly with a sad smile on his face. Izuku was shocked and wondered what the offer was. One for All has hit the singularity point. The theory is that quirks that pass this point will go under some form of reset. From what we can agree on is that this means that One for All will weaken in the next user before regrowing, since it will have expelled some of the quirks to make room for more power. This means that All for One will have an entire generation of a user to do as he pleases, since it will revert back to the strength of around the 6th user, which wasn't really strong enough to fight him, stated the first user, and Izuku was in shock. Then the first user started to talk again. He talked about what his offer was. "My offer is the knowledge of how to perform what I would call the final smash of One for All. It would result in almost all of the power of One for All going through your body, but the problem is that it would likely kill you. As you saw back in the USJ, you went above 100%. This is when you access the entire pool and start pulling more energy out than your body can handle, which damages you. It's similar to how you controlled One for All before at lower amounts, but in this case, instead of hitting the 100% output that One for All provides and naturally expands over time to fit your body, You destroy the output flow control on one for all and everything comes out, which has around an 80% chance of killing you at our current estimates, stated the first user. Izuku was in shock. A move that likely would kill him but would have the highest odds of wiping out All for One's entire body in one move. Izuku knew the first user was right. If Izuku saw no other way, he wouldn't hesitate to use the move. If it meant keeping everyone safe, he would use it. See what I mean by condemning you to die? I know you will use this and the other users don't want to offer you this knowledge, but they can't stop me. Only I have it and can pass it on as the first user. One for All provided me the knowledge when I first appeared here. Do you hate me now that I am condemning you to die? Asked the first user, and Izuku responded with a no without hesitating. I can't hate you. I could understand the other's reluctance to give it to me. If All Might knew about this, he would be pissed, to say the least, Izuku said as he chuckled thinking about his master knowing about this. The first user asked if he was going to tell the 8th user, but Izuku said he wasn't going to. He didn't need his master worrying about it. As I told him, stopping All for One is my job now, not his. His job is the symbol of peace and being a teacher. If he knew, he would without a doubt stop me from getting close to All One for to fight him, Izuku stated, and the first user nodded his head. Soon the first user started to transfer all of the knowledge of the final smash to Izuku. It wasn't really a smash at all. It was more of a large explosion of power eradicating everything it can. The first user warned that Izuku would need to get All for One far in the air before using the move, or else he would destroy and kill anyone near him. Izuku finished remembering about the dream he had. He did a good job hiding the new information from his master and anyone else. They didn't need to know of his likely death. To think that the first user still says that All for One is equal or stronger to me at 100% of One for All before I am able to start expanding it, which will take a lot of time, which we don't have. We also don't know of any of the quirks he gained from the last fight to now, which is troublesome, Izuku thought. Izuku had some grim thoughts in his mind about his possible death. He had already started writing a will that he needs to finish. There are some personal letters in it to be given out to some people. However, Izuku knew he needed to focus his mind back on his objective since he now arrived in Hasu. Before anyone could spot him, he got off the train and got onto some buildings to hide from the public eye. He didn't need people alerting Stain of his location here in Hasu, or else he might run. Soon Izuku got to his hotel and checked in. After changing his outfit, he got to work and started to scout the city. Though nothing really happened, and he avoided criminals or taking people in if they didn't harm anyone in front of him. He was focusing on finding Stain and ensuring Ida didn't do something stupid. However, it seems about a late afternoon on day 3 his luck ran out and Ida did something stupid in a crisis. Izuku had alerted All Might, who was at the hotel, about the amount of Nomus running around the city, but he also warned him that he had to go find Ida since he ran away from his mentor for the internship. All Might said he should be able to handle it all with the other heroes, and word was that Endeavor was also in the city. Izuku knew Endeavor was likely after Stain as well, but Izuku needed to find Ida. Soon Izuku got running after alerting All Might, and about 10 minutes later of searching he found Ida about to get killed. Izuku charged up to 100% for a split second and burst off in a blinding speed and socked Stain right in the face at around 35%, hoping it was enough to knock him out and not kill him. Ida, I will deal with you when we get out of this situation. Can you move? Izuku asked. Sir, no I can't. I got hit by his quirk, I think. Ida, who used his first name as his hero name like an idiot, said. Izuku groaned and saw Native was down on the ground. He quickly moved Native to Ida's location since he was still lucid a bit. I'm assuming you got hit as well, Izuku asked as he looked over the wounds and got ready to retreat with them. But as he started to pull them up, a blade came flying at him and he had to drop them and dodge. Guess you won't let me get them out of here, will you? Izuku stated, and Stain appeared with a bruise on his face. No, I won't. Though I must admit I'm surprised you are focused on getting them out instead of capturing me. Stain asked. I admit I am here to capture you, but they come first. I don't know if you hit any major blood vessels, and there is a risk of them bleeding to death, so got to get them medical care hopefully first before kicking your ass, Izuku said with a bright smile as he got in front of the 2 down heroes. However, it seems I will be forced to take you out first before I can get them out of here, Izuku said as he charged up to 60% and bounced off the walls. He couldn't use much more since even at 60% he was making small holes in the walls and had to be careful not to destroy the walls. Stain tried throwing knives at Izuku, but Izuku kept dodging them due to his speed. Izuku just kept this up for about 3 minutes as he got closer and closer to Stain to do quick attacks before backing off. Based on the information he had, he couldn't get too close for too long to his main sword since he was quicker with them and could get some of his blood to drink, which is how his quirk works, or so Izuku thinks, but he doesn't want to confirm it. Why won't you attack me directly instead of doing hit and runs? Stain stated. Izuku rolled his eyes. Because I got a good idea of how your quirk works, and I'm not trying to let you use it. If my theories are right, you need blood to activate your quirk, though I don't know how long it lasts before it wears off. Izuku said, and Stain smirked. Correct. Good guess, Stain said as he charged towards the downed heroes, which forced Izuku to fight him directly to keep him away from the downed heroes. Then Izuku noticed Ida get up. Ida, get native out of here. Izuku yelled, but Ida was an idiot and charged Stain, which shocked them both. Are you an idiot? Yelled both Stain and Izuku at the same time. Izuku had knocked Ida back before Stain could slice him with his blade, but Stain did throw a blade and it landed in Ida's arm. Ida, get native and leave right now. I will deal with you later. Do not disobey me, Izuku said as he peaked his power, which created a large feeling of power that made Ida back away in fear. He obeyed and grabbed native and ran off. Your power, your presence feels just like All Might. I can see why you are his protege. You remind me of him a lot. No one else had the right to be called his protege, Stain yelled, though Izuku corrected that last part. Actually, 2 more have that right, Izuku said, and this confused Stain. He asked for exploitation and Izuku gave a brief explanation as he looked for an opening to strike. Know the 3 misfits tragedy? Izuku asked, and Stain said he did, and that 2 of a 3 team died but no names were released. I was the 3rd person and I requested no names being released. I didn't want my brothers in all, but blood gets used for political bullshit. They were All Might's proteges alongside me, but they suffered an ill fate that day. I always think they kept my soul going from the other side so I could keep pushing forward, Izuku said as he saw a chance to attack and did so as Stain was a shock from the story, which made him back away as Izuku came charging. Izuku was able to get close enough and secured one of Stain's blades from him, so he was down 1 main blade. Stain cursed and glared at Izuku. As they were staring each other down, Stain asked for the names. Izuku gave them. Red Demon and Domovoy. We 3 made up the 3 Misfits group. We had plans to open our own agency and everything. I'm not allowed to join them until I die of old age or in a battle of glory, so this is where you are stopped, Stain, Izuku said as he blasted off at 70% and created a decent-sized hole in the ground from him blasting off. Stain was shocked at the speed, and then Izuku changed his direction in midair, shocking Stain even more as Izuku used float to go right around Stain and attacked from the side. Stain took the hit right into his side and got blasted into the wall. Izuku capitalized on the moment, but Stain reacted since Izuku only used 35% again since he didn't want to kill Stain. Stain came down with the sword and Izuku bent around it and landed an uppercut to his jaw, knocking him out due to the shock it had on the brain. Izuku breathed in the fresh air as he took his mask off. Damn, he was experienced. He withstood so many hits at 35%. That's the problem of going higher of the risk of death, and he withstood 35% in multiple hits. Izuku tied Stain up and removed all the blades he found. He then gathered them all up and carried them in one bag he found and then carried Stain on his shoulder. Stain came to and noticed he was tied. Please don't move. I don't know how many bones I likely broke, and I don't need you risking them hitting an organ or something before I get you to a hospital, Izuku said. Stain looked at Izuku in the eye from where he could see inside. You truly are a good hero. Even caring about the villain after the fact, though that kid is a fake hero, Stain said. Izuku shook his head slightly, which confused Stain. I admit he was stupid and did something really bad, but he can still be an amazing hero. He is just a kid that hasn't had to go through experiences enough to learn from. That is why I got my teaching license and helped their class out to try and correct things like this. It's why I came and followed him on his internship, since I had a feeling he would do something like this, but we had no proof to stop him. He is still young and can be transformed by UA, since good teachers are there like Eraserhead, All Might, Principal Nezu, and many more that dedicate themselves to making better heroes than the last generation, Izuku said, and Stain was silent. They soon came out and found Native and Ida. Why aren't you at a hospital ready? I was fighting for like 10 minutes, Izuku asked, and Ida glared at Stain and wanted to say something to him, but Izuku stopped him. Stop glaring at him and answer my question. My patience with you is thin right now, Izuku said. Ida explained that the emergency services are still dealing with the Nomus around town but would be arriving soon. Izuku nodded his head. Ida, I really hope you understand where you went wrong. You went out and tried to be a vigilante and murder someone. If you succeeded, it would make you no better than Stain, but you didn't, so there is some hope of you coming back from this. But I want to address the real problem. The fact that you saw no issue with taking on someone that took your brother down. Do you realize what that would have done to your family? To your brother? He would have blamed himself for it and could have led to him becoming depressed or worse, Izuku stated, and at that moment Ada's eyes widened in the realization of what he did. If Izuku didn't come, then he would be dead and his family would blame themselves. I see you figured out where you went wrong. We will talk more once everything is cleared up, but you might face some punishment after this if the police decided to not doing anything about you, Izuku said as he heard the police sirens, and All Might appeared only a few seconds after the police did, which Izuku was glad for. Izuku handed Stain off to the police and told them that he needs to go to a villain hospital due to wounds and likely heavy broken bones. And with that, I hope you all enjoy the series. Be sure to drink some water and go touch grass, and with that, I'll see you all in the next part. Take care and bye bye.